Hey everyone, it is January 11th, 2017, and we are live for another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. My name is Raphael Garcia, calling from, or I guess dialing in from Washington, D.C., or the D.C. area, and we are here. We are back for another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. I want to say thank you for listening. My partner, Schwan Humes, is going to join us as usual. He is on his way in, just sent him the invite for the session. And yeah, so it's another week, another edition of some interesting news within the MMA space. So we have a couple of things to talk about. Today, we're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night 103, which is coming up on this Sunday, special edition Sunday show. We'll be talking about that, and we'll be talking about some of the news from this week, such as Mark Hunt's lawsuit against the UFC. And what else? Mark Hunt's lawsuit, UFC canceling another show, Meryl Streep's comments. So yeah, we'll be talking about a couple of different things. Kind of a shorter show today because we do not have as much to talk about, at least not right yet, but I'm sure that Schwan and I will have some interesting conversations for you either way. But still, with that in mind, let me get my partner on. So you're not just listening to me. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting the show as of late. We've had some great numbers, and we appreciate it. Because we appreciate you taking time to like the show, to listen to the show. You can find us at MMAratings.net. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at MMA Ratings in both spaces. Check us out on Facebook. Check out all of our content. And yeah, let me go ahead and get this show started. So first things first, we're going to spend much of our agenda today talking about UFC Fight Night 103, where we are going to see a couple of different things. Obviously, at the top of the card is one guy that many of you may know, who goes by the name of BJ Penn, one of the most interesting athletes in MMA history. One of the few fighters to hold 2 championships in 2 divisions. Former lightweight champion, former welterweight champion. We'll be talking about him. We're going to be talking about his big fight against Yair Rodriguez, which I think is an interesting fight. I'm looking forward to seeing how Schwan breaks this fight down, because you certainly have a moment where you have a guy who's returning, didn't look as good as he's always have in the past, so he's coming back to fight against someone who is an up-and-comer who has been looking great in his last few wins within the UFC. So it's an opportunity for Rodriguez. I feel like he's the one that has everything to lose in this fight, because if he loses to a quote-unquote aging BJ Penn, that definitely knocks a lot of the sales out of his rise to fame, especially if he loses in exciting type fashion, because that's not going to look good for him in any way, shape, or form. So yes, of course, we have him on the docket. We also have who else we have? We also have Yair Rodriguez on the other side of that, 9-1 fighter who is he's still young, 24 years old. And this is his fifth fight, 6th fight in the UFC. And he's looking to build on that run at featherweight, because he's put together pretty good last few wins. He has that split decision win against Alex Caceres at UFC Fight Night 92. I feel like that fight wasn't necessarily a split decision. I don't remember it all the way, but I think it's one of those ones where the judges may have been not watching as closely as they should. But he also has that highlight reel win over Andre Touchy-Feely. So yeah, Rodriguez is someone that the UFC has their eye on. He's someone that the UFC can definitely build upon because obviously everyone's well aware that they want to tap into the Mexican market. And this guy is born and raised in Mexico. He's the type of guy that not a division could be built around, but he's the type of guy that a showcase could be built around if given the right fight. You know, UFC is good for taking men and women who are from specific areas and showcasing them in a way where the opportunity gives them a chance to kind of shine in front of their hometown crowd. And Rodriguez is someone who can grow in that way. So yeah, let's see what he can do in this fight. Again, as I said, I'm looking forward to Schwan breaking this down because I think he's going to have some great things to say. But and we'll have some interesting things to say about this fight. And yeah. Sorry about that momentary silence there, folks. So yes, let's look at this fight here because on one hand we have BJ Penn. Give me 1 second, folks. Sorry about this. Try and get something squared away. Okay, so yeah, so we're back. Sorry about that. So yes, we are going to start with the fight between Penn and Rodriguez. We're going to look at a couple of different things too. Obviously, I'm most interested in talking about the Joe Lozon Marcin Held fight. I'm most interested in talking about the Joe Lozon Marcin Held fight. I think that fight is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very technical, especially when the fight hits the ground. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. We also have the bout between um, John Moraga and Sergio Pettis. That's another one. You know, Pettis is he's only lost twice, but this guy's kind of lost a lot of steam since coming over, especially as his brother has continuously diminished in the last couple years. So I think this is an important fight for Sergio as well. Me and Schwan are gonna talk about that fight. Well, what else do I want to look at from this card? From this card, we also have, excuse me, honestly, that's probably about everything that's interests me from this event. And it's unfortunate because you know this is another one of those international cards that aren't the most exciting on paper, and it's coming after a pretty big moment at UFC 207 after a and it's an off after a an off weekend for UFC events, and also it's on an odd day with it being on a Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see what types of numbers this show does once the everything's tabulated after Sunday. But I think Schwan just joined us. How you doing there, sir?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. We are live as always, back for another week to talk all things MMA. And right now, you came in at a perfect timing because we're talking about UFC Fight Night 103. That features the return of someone that's kind of important to MMA. I guess some people may call him a legend. Some people may call him a superstar, Hall of Famer, all those other names. But we do have the return of one BJ Penn. And I'm really interested in seeing how you break down this fight between him and Yair Rodriguez. Like, I've seen Rodriguez fight, but am really not too familiar. I kind of slipped my mind over recent months. So talk to me about this fight, man. What do you see when you see Yair versus Penn on paper?
Well, the biggest thing, I'm actually a Yair Rodriguez fan. I think he has a lot of potential, a lot of talent. Um, it seems like an interesting matchup, kind of more of an old school fighter against a new school fighter. The thing about Yair is I think people favoring him over BJ, and I'm not saying they shouldn't because BJ didn't look good in his last fight, hasn't looked good in his last couple fights. But people are forgetting that BJ was fighting Nick Diaz, Rory McDonald, and Frankie Edgar, a kind of caliber of opponent that's way above where Rodriguez is, and the kind of opponent that Rodriguez has never faced himself. So looking bad against essentially the best guys in the welterweight division and the second best guy in the featherweight division doesn't carry as much weight with me when the people say that BJ doesn't have it anymore or he can't compete. I don't know that that's the case. I know that he hasn't necessarily fared well against the elite, but Yair Rodriguez is not the elite. And that was before BJ seemingly has been more focused into his training and his preparation and his conditioning and training with actual UFC level fighters to prepare for what he's getting involved in. Um,
I
my
mean,
big,
BJ was more focused before the Frankie Edgar fight too. So, we've heard
I
this
don't
story time and time again.
the thing about it was when he was doing that, he was doing it on his own. Like the times when BJ has been most dominant has been when he's been under somebody else's directions. He worked under Marinovich, the conditioning coaches, during his epic run at lightweight. When he came back, he was essentially doing his own thing, working under coaches he was calling the shots with and kind of dictating things. Since he's given in to work with Greg Jackson, I feel a little bit better because Greg Jackson has a camp full of contenders, entitled challengers, and titleists. He's not gonna kowtow to BJ Penn. You know, he's impressed by it. He likes him. He respects what he's done. But he's coached against BJ Penn, and in that regard, he's beaten BJ Penn. So he's already had a lot of ideas of how BJ Penn loses, why BJ Penn loses, and what BJ Penn could do to round out his game or be more effective. So I think in this case, BJ is actually going to be in the best shape and actually fully prepared because he's in an actual camp. He's not doing his own camp where guys come through. He's in an actual MMA camp run by the people. He doesn't have any control over it. He just goes through what they want. He learns what they tell him to do. He spars with who they want him to, and it goes from there. And that's not something you've seen in BJ's later years when he's been coming back. He's just been dictating the terms. And when he's run the show, he's never been really great when he's running the show. When other people are running the show and pushing the conditioning and setting up the sparring, he looks spectacular. When he's running the show, it's hit or miss every time.
So let me ask you this: with the way he performed at UFC, the last fight, the fight against Frankie Edgar, can that one be charged to more of a, I don't want to say a learning curve, but it was his first time being there fighting with I think that was his first fight under uh the Winklejohn camp, correct?
I don't think so. I think when he had that fight against Edgar, he was once again doing his own thing. He wasn't even working with Jason Perillo. Jason Perillo, who is a severely underrated MMA coach. He works with Bisping and Cyborg, among two of his bigger names he's worked with. He wasn't even working with him because a lot of people were like, well, why BJ coming out on that ridiculous stance? And Perillo said, that had nothing to do with me. BJ didn't call me in for this camp. I had nothing to do with it. I don't know why he came out looking the way he looked. And he wasn't working with Jackson either. Jackson came after that loss a couple months after when he started talking about coming back to the UFC. That's when he reached out and they started setting things up.
Okay, so then put your coaching hat on. Then, what do you expect to see from BJ in this return fight?
Well, the biggest thing, the first thing I looked at was his opponent. And once again, as I said this, Rodriguez is a very good athlete. He's got a lot of potential. But my first of all, I want to say that I'm going for BJ. I think BJ is going to win this fight. In watching Yair Rodriguez fight, I see a lot of holes that BJ can exploit. Even the BJ that's really not in good shape could exploit it as long as he comes out in his typical boxer stance and uses some of the remnants of his old style. I would think that BJ could still beat Yair Rodriguez because he's a guy who's got a lot of athleticism, a wide range of skills, but he's not particularly effective in any one range. Even the kicking range, he's dynamic and explosive, but he's kind of predictable, and he's not terribly accurate. That fight against Caceres and some of his other fights should have shown people that he misses a lot. He throws a lot of heat, there's a lot of creativity, but he misses a lot. He's not efficient. His grappling isn't top notch. His wrestling isn't top notch, and his boxing it's all right. It's competent, but a lot of that is based off all his athleticism. I haven't seen a lot of depth and layered skill in what he does. So when I'm looking at BJ, I would tell BJ to come out there and not press it. You don't come out there and try and get in a firefight with this guy, because that's a spot where you could get caught early. I'd actually try to walk him down and try to like put a jab on him and draw out counters. Yair is going to go for the big kick, the dynamic wide swinging punch. He's going to look to set up some kind of dynamic offense. He's not going to go at a slow, methodical pace with BJ Penn, because BJ Penn's got too much experience for him. He's got too much experience. He's got the far better boxing. If by some miracle it ends up on the ground, Yair Rodriguez doesn't want any parts of BJ on the ground. Nobody really does. Even in his faded times, people weren't rushing to get jumping to BJ Penn's guard and getting prolonged, extended grappling exchanges with him. That's just something that's never going to happen because he's just that good. So if I'm BJ, I start cutting off the cage. I put a jab on him. I kind of force him to engage me first, and I look for counters, whether it's a counter takedown, whether it's just a counter shot, overhand right, countering to the body. It's whatever he chooses, because BJ is an experienced enough veteran that he knows what to look for. He's going to see the signs, but I'm going to be an aggressive counterpunch, walk him down, cut the cage, slow the pace of the fight down, and just break him down. I know Yair is going to give me chances to take him down, because he's going to throw those spinning kicks, those high altitude dynamic kicks. He's going to throw them. He's going to throw wide, hard punches. He's going to come charging in. And if BJ is set for the counter, he's going to run Yair into the straight right hand, a left hook. He could run him into a takedown. And if BJ Penn gets on top of him, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's all over. I haven't seen anything that Yair Rodriguez has done that tells me that even a faded BJ Penn can't have his way with him on the ground. So it's just a matter of applying deliberate pressure and slowly breaking him down. You don't let him dictate the pace. He's going to fight. He's going to explode in spots. Let him explode in those spots, but just draw out what you want to see from him, and then you land those counters. And Yair's defense is wide open. It's all athletically based. He's too quick. He's too fast to get hit. Once he starts slowing down, I expect BJ to push up the volume, wear him down, and hopefully finish him within 5 rounds. Is what I'm thinking.
So let's flip the script there then. What do you think needs to be done for Rodriguez to get the win here?
The faster the pace of the fight, the better for Yair. If he can just come out and put something on BJ really quick, because BJ hasn't fought in a long time, and BJ's had big breaks. I know he sparred a lot, but I know he's very seasoned. But the best time to catch him is early. Catch him fresh. It's similar to the thing with Ronda Rousey. If Amanda Nunes would have given her some space, let her work herself into the fight, get some confidence, Amanda Nunes would have had a huge problem. But the fact is, she jumped on her immediately and didn't give her any ground, didn't let her have any success, hit her early, hit her often, and overwhelmed her. That's essentially what I would try if I'm Rodriguez. I'm trying to catch him early and force him into a high-paced fight, because BJ Penn historically can fight a round or two at a high pace, but usually after that is when you start slowing down. And he might be in better shape now, but the fact of the matter is he is a veteran. He is older now. He's not as young as he used to be. So fatigue is going to set in a little bit faster than it did before. So if you can get him into a high octane, lots of activity fight, you can wear on him and then hopefully take over in the later rounds if you're still there.
So yeah, he's 38 years old, and he's 38, and he has fought 2 times in the last 5 years, losing to Rory McDonald and Frankie Edgar. So yeah, he's definitely had a very slim production schedule over that time. You're definitely right. So I'm going to keep firing the questions at you here. So I personally believe that Yair has the most to lose in this fight here. Do you agree or not?
I agree with you completely, because if you lose, I mean, this would almost be TJ Dillashaw bad, is when Dominic Cruz basically got off the operating table, took a break at the analyst desk, and then walked to the cage and handed Dillashaw his ass. You're a guy who hasn't really won a fight against anybody of note in how many years? And this guy comes in 38, having not won a fight, rusty, not sharp in theory, and he comes in, he handles you. If he beats him by decision, it's bad. If he finishes him, it's pretty embarrassing, and it tells us that Yair Rodriguez is not who everybody else thinks he is. Once again, I think he's a talent. I think he's got the ability, but I don't think Yair Rodriguez is as good as everybody keeps telling me is. They keep telling me, look at his highlights. I see all those highlights. He didn't finish a lot of people in those highlights. He missed a lot of kicks and punches in those highlights. He got tired late in fights in those highlights. He has a lot of creativity, a lot of unorthodox moves. But when have you ever seen him working consistent jab? When have you ever seen him use solid, defensively responsible maneuvers and counters? I haven't seen it in like 4 or 5 fights I've seen him. He's easy to hit. He's not particularly hard to take down. He's dynamic on the feet, but as unorthodox as he is, he's somewhat predictable. Watch that Caceres fight. Same kicks over and over, rushing in on punches. I mean, anybody who had a pivot and a right hook or left hook would have walked him into a KO shot. And he's beat some athletic, talented guys, but he hasn't beaten anybody who can really take punishment, who's got a real high IQ and has a real sense of combat sports. As far as I've competed against the best, I know how to handle myself. I know how to maneuver. I know how to find ways to win and find ways to survive. I don't think Yair Rodriguez would have made it through 2 rounds with Frankie Edgar if he would have fought him. And BJ did that. BJ went rounds with Diaz. He went rounds with McDonald. He's got a chin. He's got experience. He's got to know this is his last chance. There's a lot of intangible advantages that BJ has that people are dismissing because he's an older guy, and I get that. But if you look at Yair Rodriguez for what he's done in the fight and his skill set, it's hard for me to say that he actually beats Penn. Now he might beat Penn, he might beat him. It's possible, but where is he going to beat him at? Is he going to knock him out? I don't know that he hits that hard. He didn't knock Caceres out. Is he going to submit him? Nah, that's not going to happen. He's not submitting BJ Penn. If he submits BJ Penn needs to never come back to MMA. Is he going to out wrestle him? I haven't seen too many guys actually out wrestle BJ Penn still. Maybe Frankie Edgar. And that was only when BJ Penn was using that ridiculous stance he was using. So I don't have a clear way of victory for Yair Rodriguez. I think BJ can knock Yair out. I think BJ can submit Yair. I think BJ can take him down and work him over for a couple rounds. I really think he has more avenues to win the fight. And the only reason it's going to hurt Yair's reputation is because nobody's giving BJ any respect or any chance because of how bad he's looked against the best of every division. That's why nobody's giving him a chance. Who outside of the elite guys that made BJ Penn look human? Rory McDonald made him look human. GSP made him look human. Nick Diaz and Frankie Edgar. Who don't those guys dominate?
Yeah, that's a very true story there. That's a very true story. A good way to break it down there. So let me ask you this next. So you're picking BJ Penn to win the fight. BJ Penn wins. What's next for him? He's 38 years old. He's in the featherweight division for the first time around, or second time around, because he fought Edgar there. What do you see that's next for him? I don't believe he can defeat any of the contenders right now. Like, let's look at the top 15 in the UFC rankings. Let's see who he could possibly beat. I'm going to guess. I'm sure you'll pick him over some of these guys, but let's just see who's here because I can't really remember. Let's see.
I know. You know what? Renan Barão has not looked really good to me. He looks real shaky to me. He doesn't look like his chin's still there. If BJ beats Yair Rodriguez, Renan Barão would be a good fight for him. I know Barão's dynamic. I know he's got athleticism and length, but he's been very hittable. He doesn't look like he absorbs or recovers from strikes as well as he used to. He doesn't have the same work rate. I mean, he went tooth and nail with Philip Nova. He's ranked in the top 10.
Yeah.
I think.
He's 14 now.
Oh,
so let's see. So let's go 10 down.
Okay.
Number 10 is Yair Rodriguez. 11 is Doho Choi. 12 is Darren Elkins. That I can see him winning a Darren Elkins fight unless Elkins wrestles him for 2 out of 3 rounds. Mirsad Betic is 13. Renan Barão is 14, and Andre Fili is 15. I can agree with you on Renan Barão and Andre Fili. I can see him beating him too.
Yeah. I really think if BJ's in shape and he's really adjusted his training to fit his age and to fit what he's dealing with in the octagon now, and most importantly, if he still has his durability, like he really can still take a shot, I think he beats Philly. I'm pretty sure he's going to beat Rodriguez. I already went for him against Rodriguez. I think he beats Barral. Um, who was the other guy? Elkins. I think he can beat
Elkins.
Elkins. He just has to be in shape, and he has to fight smart. If he fights smart, using his footwork, using his jab, Elkins' stand up offense isn't great, and his stand up defense is isn't worse. Would be saying his stand up defense is bad is an insult to bad stand up defense. He's just easy to hit on the feet. And BJ,
Hmm.
if he's on point, his takedown defense is almost immaculate. He's only been taken down by the very best guys in the world. Darian Elkins is more of a volume, I wear you down with my constant attempts kind of takedown guy. He's not a sharp technique dude. I mean, BJ, if he's right and he's on his game and he shows something against Rodriguez this weekend, I would pick BJ to stop Elkins. Elkins can take a beating, but BJ's a sharp puncher. It's just a matter of whether his conditioning's there and if his chin's there. If those two things are on point, I think he beats those guys from 15 to 10.
Interesting. Interesting. Looking at that list, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna argue that. I think it's a pretty interesting call. And I'm not too surprised there. Um, let me. I'm gonna ask one more question in reference
I
to
make
this.
an indictment against Rodriguez. I'm not saying Rodriguez is terrible. I'm not saying he can't fight. It's just when I watch the film and I see him fight and I see who he's had trouble with and the level of skill they have and the level of experience and their physical durability, if BJ Penn is right, which I'm thinking he is, because he has to know this is his last chance, I don't see how Yair Rodriguez beats him on anything if, from a technical perspective. I'm not saying he can't win. I'm just saying when somebody explains to me, I'm like, how does he win? He knocks him out. Who is he knocked out? He knocked out Andre Fili with like a clean, powerful head kick. Who else has he knocked out?
Who, Andre Philly?
No, I mean Yair Rodriguez. He knocked out Fili, but
Oh,
who else has he knocked out in the UFC? Who else has he just ran through?
who else? I got his record up right here. He had. Do you remember that fight with Alex Caceres? Is listed as a split decision, but I feel like that was Yair's fight, and
It was
it was.
it was a tight fight. Yair, it was really even fight. It could have went to Caceres, to be honest. It was a pick 'em fight, to be quite honest. It wasn't a dominant performance by Yair at all. In fact, Yair faded badly late in the fight. He just kept spamming high spinning kicks and wheel kicks, and he kept missing them. And he eventually got tired, and then Caceres started touching him up. If Caceres would have put more pressure on him, Caceres could have won that fight. He might have gotten him out of there. But Caceres doesn't like to put offense together either. He's kind of a highlight one shot at a time, spinning kick, fancy front kick type of guy. Same thing as Rodriguez. It was two of the same guys fighting each other, and they basically canceled each other out.
Is that well? Yeah, like that was. I couldn't really remember that fight when I looked at his resume. But other than that, the only other individuals and I say only in a bad way, but he's defeated Dan Hooker, Charles Rosa, and Leandro Morales since joining the UFC in 2014.
And I don't think he knocked any of those guys out either. If he didn't knock out
No, he did not.
so people keep telling me early knockout. I don't remember BJ ever really getting knocked out by a guy who hadn't shown some ability to put people away. Even Frankie Edgar put Maynard away. He put Mendez away. He's put people away before. Feely's he doesn't put shots together well enough to put people away, and he doesn't have one shot knockout power. So when people tell me knockout, I can't see that. When they tell me he's gonna out grapple BJ Penn, I mean you grapple. You know how good BJ is. The
Yeah,
likelihood of him finishing BJ Penn is if he finished BJ Penn by submission, that would be my submission of the year. I wouldn't have to see nothing else. You submitted BJ Penn. That's good enough. You've already won submission of the year from this point on. But that's not going to happen either. I guess he could out wrestle him, but I haven't seen him out wrestle anybody either. So everything people tell me about him winning is attribute based. He's just so dynamic. He's so young. BJ looks so bad. Okay, BJ looks so bad, but what are you telling me technically and strategically he's going to do to win this fight? And when I say that, people don't really have a good answer for me. They're just like, oh, he'll overwhelm him with volume. He'll explode on him. That could happen, but that's not something I want to bet on. I want to bet on something that I've seen him do over the past couple fights, and I haven't seen him do the things that I think he needs to do to beat BJ. If
I'm not
BJ
mad at you
wins,
for that
and
too.
I think he will.
That's some good breakdowns there.
Sorry to cut you off. I get talkative. You know how I am.
No, 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 it's all good. It's all good. I was just saying that like those are some good breakdowns, and I understand why you are seeing it the way you do. Let me ask you this then too. So, what else from this event kind of stands out for you? In my opinion, I'm really looking forward to this Joe Lozon Marcin Held fight. I think we're going to see a lot of technical grappling here. I think we're going to see some play on the feet to start, but this fight is going to hit the floor. I think we're going to see some very technical grappling, and this is the type of fight that gets me excited because Marcin Held, he may not have looked great in his UFC debut, but we know what this guy is known for. He's known for heel hooks. He's known for tight submissions, interesting transitions and top control. But he can play both sides. He can play off the top. He can play off his back. So I'm looking forward to seeing this fight because Lozon is very aggressive, and he has a aggressive grappling style too. But Marcin Held is not the guy to sleep on because once he gets a hold of something, you might be missing that limb.
The biggest thing I like Held. I think he's got some talent. The problem I have with Held is he doesn't seem, and I've talked to a couple people about this. He doesn't seem like an all-round grappler. From what I've been told, he bounces around a lot of gyms, like goes in for sparring. He trains a little bit here and there. And as a person who's done that myself, once again, I've never fought, but as a person who bounces around gyms, kind of checks this gym out for a while, checks this gym out for a while, it's a good way to get familiar with a lot of styles. It's a good way to test how effective your style is, but it's not necessarily the best way to add the layers that you need or address the holes that you need in your address the holes in your game. Like you might get exposed to them, but when you're only going there for a little while, you don't get exposed to them to the point where you have to actually address them because you're not there long enough for guys to really make you pay for it. And since you're not part of the gym, a lot of guys aren't really going out of their way to assist you in developing clear counters and clear escapes and clear answers for the questions that your style might pose. So Held, as good as he is at leg locks, he to me he's not a very good grappler. He's a very creative leg lock guy. He's a very dynamic leg lock guy. He's a very unorthodox leg lock guy. But that's all he has. If you watch his fights, that's all he goes for. Lozon to me is a more complete grappler. He's a little bit more physical, and he pushes more of a pace. I don't think Held has really good cardio. I think Lozon can out wrestle him, and if Lozon can basically if Lozon can avoid the leg locks and defend them, what's going to happen is Held's going to expend all his energy going for those leg locks, and then he's going to end up on the bottom, and then he's going to get out wrestled, and he's going to get chopped up. Is my impression of how the fight goes, because Held's wrestling isn't great, and his defensive counter grappling isn't good, except for his ability to reverse or switch into a leg lock. I haven't seen him work an effective guard. I haven't seen him use triangles and arm bars, even as threats to get better position or to finish. I've seen him work a lot of leg locks. When he's faced the best guys, that's what he's resorted to. And when that hasn't worked, guys have worked him over, ground him out, and then beat him up. I mean, that's been the story of his life, and that's why he lost against Diego. And I picked Diego to beat him. I'm like, he's not going to submit him. Diego's going to get on top, and he's just going to grind him out. And even if they're doing switches and reversals and scrambles, Diego might not have the greatest chin, but his cardio is his cardio is bulletproof. His cardio is nuclear warhead proof. He will never get tired grappling. And I know Held does. And when Held gets tired, he gets sloppy. When he gets sloppy, his defense and his counters get even worse, and he just gets beat up. I expect Lozon to be able to out grapple him. And if Lozon really wants to be cocky about it, Held ain't got nothing for him on the feet unless Lozon's heart's just not in it, and he's not willing to go. He's not willing to take a little bit to get his offense off. But if he's in the same mindset he had when he fought Dan Miller, he should beat up Held, and it should be a good fight at first, but he should walk Held down and then beat him up, in my opinion.
Okay, okay. I can definitely see your breakdown there. I'm looking forward to that fight as well. What else from this card stands out to you? I looked over it today and I wasn't too impressed with what I saw, but I'm sure that you can find some value in UFC Fight Night 103.
Well, there's a couple fights. One is I know he's had some losses, but the thing about Sergio, I've said this before many times. I said this on Twitter. I think he's actually the better Pettis brother. I think Anthony Pettis is more of an athlete who's got a lot of intangible, natural ability that allows him to do certain things and allowed him to get to a certain point of success. But once the talent level started evening out and people started seeing more tape on him, he hasn't developed the fundamental skills to put the big play offense all together. And worse yet, he hasn't developed the fundamental defensive and countering skills to keep guys from putting big offense on him. Sergio Pettis isn't the athlete Anthony is. Not power wise, not timing wise, not speed wise, nothing. He's just not. So he's been forced to have to develop these games. All the things that I find holes in with Anthony Pettis's game, I don't find those holes at all with Sergio, or I don't find it to be as big. He knows how to use a jab. He knows how to control a pace. He can pivot. He'll move his feet. He knows how to work his way into certain spots and work his way out of certain spots. He has a sense of urgency because he knows he can't just turn a fight around by finding a submission or finishing someone because he's got such powerful single strikes. He knows he has to work entire rounds to win fights. He knows he has to fight very smart to win fights. He knows he has to have a sense of urgency and pick his spots when to push it. He can't just let a guy outwork him. He's not just going to let a guy dictate pace on him knowing that he can finish at any time. Sergio Pettis doesn't know that he can finish at any time, which means he has to be on his P's and Q's as far as defensive responsibility and offensive efficiency. So I'm interested to see if he takes yet another step forward and showcases the differences between him and Anthony Pettis, because at one point people were like, maybe he'll be as good as Anthony. But I think if you really watch the tape and you start watching film, you're going to start hoping that maybe Anthony Pettis will take some direction from Sergio and start rounding out his game so that he won't have as many holes that can be exploited. Because people have figured out Pettis and he's lost a bunch of fights in a row. Sergio, while not fighting that level of opponent, has not lost multiple fights in a row, and he hasn't lost them in a manner where he wasn't competitive. So I'm interested to see if he takes the next step to becoming a legitimate contender in his division. I think he has the skills and the mindset to do so. The only other fight I was probably interested in seeing, just out of the fact that it should get some attention because this woman's in a relationship with the new bantamweight champion, or the current bantamweight champion, Nina Ansaroff. She's fighting on the preliminary card, and that's going to be a point of interest from a lot of people because once again, she's an openly gay fighter, so she's a lesbian fighter, and she's also connected to Amanda Nunes. So some people will check into that fight just to see how she does. It might be a point of interest between them. I mean, a lot of people benefit from the relationships they have when they occur in the UFC. Brian Caraway's benefited from being connected to Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate benefited by being connected to Brian Caraway. I think this might play something similar. And Ansaroff, though not a top fighter in her division, she has a lot of talent and she has some skill. And if she makes some adjustments, she could really make a run. I don't know that she's made those adjustments yet, but she hasn't been in the cage in a while. So I'm hoping to see some growth from her because that division is getting a little thinned out because Joanne's been just running through everybody. We need more contenders to come up and to push people so that we continue to have the high level title fights that we've been having in that division.
That's some good breakdowns there, man. That's some good breakdowns. I'm looking at this. This card's on Sunday, so I'm interested in seeing what kind of numbers it does from a production standpoint. But I wasn't too interested in the showcase, but I definitely do appreciate how you look at the event. Let's talk about some of the news that broke from this week, and perhaps the biggest and most interesting bit is the fact that Mark Hunt has sued the UFC. Did you get a chance to look at this story?
Yes, I actually was looking into it earlier today, and I have to say I was impressed.
I was too. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this fight, if it gets thrown out or if something else occurs. Simply because if you look at the if you had the opportunity to read like the outline of what he's suing for, it'll be interesting to see if the UFC can get out of this. Because some people are saying, he has a very good case built. There's others saying that it may just get tossed out. And don't forget, he's still listed as a participant in UFC 209. So this guy is working for the UFC and he's also suing. But remember, he's an independent contractor. They treat their independent contractors like employees, but hey, that's another conversation for another day. Do you think he has a chance to win this lawsuit?
I don't know enough about law to know that he does. I think he makes some very legitimate points. I mean, how they made these exceptions for Brock Lesnar that they don't make for other people. I mean, look at Angela Hill. She was supposed to be in the UFC, but she wasn't allowed to because of her inability, her being out of the testing program. Yet they found a loophole for Brock Lesnar to get in. And while I understand why Brock Lesnar gets in, it starts with M and ends with Y. We know why that happened. It doesn't necessarily make it right. And I think he makes a lot of legitimate points in attacking this issue because I mean, he did put himself at risk. They supposedly they are trying to crack down on people using PEDs of any sort, and yet they just gave this guy a wide open loophole to compete with possible PEDs. And they did fine him, but once again, Brock Lesnar gets paid a lot of money, just money that we know about. He makes a lot. I'm sure he made a lot more. So the fine they gave him is not the kind of fine that, in my opinion, changes his life, especially since he has another line of income being the WWE. So it doesn't really hurt him that bad. In fact, for Brock Lesnar, the damage it did, nobody expected him to be clean. So it cost him a little bit of money, but it once again shows that he's a legitimately tough guy because he beat a top ranked heavyweight. He beat him and made it look fairly easy. My issue, and once again, let me commend Mark Hunt for taking this step forward because a lot of guys complain about the UFC, a lot of guys whine about the UFC, a lot of guys say this and that, but they don't do anything. They don't make any gesture or take a stand that really backs up their point. They want other people to die on the hill for them. Mark Hunt's willing to die on the hill for what he believes. And while I commend it, I'm very impressed by it. I don't know if it's the best move. I mean, I guess the UFC can't take him off the fight now because it would look kind of suspicious and it might work in the favor of his case. But he's playing a dangerous game because he loses this fight, and it might be a long time before Mark Hunt gets another fight. He needs to win this fight. He can't afford to lose this fight. That's all I know. And secondly, I've said this
Right, he
before.
cannot lose. He can't afford now. If he lost this fight, I could see him. He has value in Bellator and promotions across the world, so I would see him immediately getting picked up. But
I'm not saying they would cut him. I'm just saying they could. The UFC is like 50 Cent when it comes to their pettiness. They don't let stuff go, and they could hold him for a while. I mean, there's nothing he can do. That's why he said he had to fight now. He said before, I lost money trying to make this stand against the UFC by not fighting, and I can't go anywhere else. I have to fight for these guys. These guys control my contract. I'm stuck with them until they let me go, or until I fight out all the fights on my contract. So he's stuck with them. They don't even have to cut him. He can only go to Bellator if they give him the opportunity. He can only go to Risen if they give him the opportunity to. His options lay at their feet, and they can decide whether to let him go, which if they were going to do that, they could have done that months ago, or make him stay and just deal with them until they're sick of dealing with them. They have all the cards in this. He doesn't really have any leverage in this at all. I mean, like none. Which is why I'm so impressed by this, because he's picking a battle that could essentially take him out of the sport for whatever few years he has left. And if he already lost millions of dollars turning down fights before, how many more millions of dollars is he going to cost himself now? Because I can't imagine they take this, like, oh, well, Mark's got a point, let him just do what he's got to do. Well, Mark's got a point. There's no need to be petty. He's making a legitimate point. Let's just support him in this. I can't see that happening.
Yeah, it's going to be it'll be hell to pay if he doesn't get this win, especially if he doesn't do it in like a spectacular fashion. Because, like you said, they are petty. They will hold that against him.
And just one more thing, while I do support what he's saying and I get his point, I really do. I do not hate Mark Hunt. I don't think he should be in an unsafe work environment. I don't think he should be risking himself in an unsafe work environment. I support that 100%. But once again, I have to make this point, and I've said this before. It's hard for me to take you totally seriously after you take the money. He himself said Brock Lesnar is juiced to the gills. So let's just say you really believe this guy is juiced to the gills and he's using something and it's dangerous and it could risk your life. Why did you take the fight? They weren't offering you that kind of money where it's worth, they weren't offering you Floyd Mayweather 20 million, 40 million to take the fight. If you're telling me it's a danger to your life, why did you take a fight that's a danger to your life for a couple 100,000 or even even 1 or 2 million? You chose to take that fight and you believe that he was using already. So you took the fight, you took your paycheck, and then once he turned out that he had used and it became actually proven, then you started complaining. I don't know if I'm really totally cool with that, because you took the money and then you complain. What you should have done is pass on the fight, let somebody else take it, and then go about your business. But you didn't want to do that because Brock Lesnar is a big payday. That's a lot of attention from you. And he took that. And then he complained after the fact. And I'm not so sure that I'm totally cool with that. and it doesn't matter what I think. Who am I? But I'm just not so sure. I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing what lawyers have to say in reference to this argument. I did a little bit of reading and what Hunt's lawyer had said. So yeah, it'll be clear to see that something's going to come from this. The UFC, I don't think the UFC has released a statement yet. I haven't seen anything, but I know one thing though. I know Alex Overeem better not fail a drug test because Mark Hunt's going to point and be loud as hell, and the UFC's going to come down on him. Like he's at first, like, a couple weeks ago, it was Cyborg better not fail a drug test, and unfortunately, she did. Now we can add Overeem to that list because he better not fail any drug test leading into or after UFC 209.
That's true, but let's just say he fails it, but he knocks out Mark Hunt. Let's say he beat him in devastating fashion. Mark Hunt can say that, this was because of drugs, and that'll be fine. But for some reason, if he does, even if he wins the case, and I don't know how much he's trying to sue for, what he's going to think he's going to get out of it, it might be enough where he can retire on. He'd be a heavyweight who's on a 2-fight losing streak and just lost a fight in dynamic fashion, which isn't a good look for him if he wants to max out the last few years of his career. Everybody's standing up for this, but a lot of organizations, even organizations that are supposedly clean, don't want a guy who's a troublemaker. And this is the kind of stuff that, unfortunately, even though he's in the right, screams troublemaker. You have lots of guys who do the right thing and then can't get hired in their chosen profession anymore. Even though everybody says, I respect him in public, I respect him. He did the right thing. He's protecting himself and his family. And why can't this guy get a job now that he's been out of the sport or this industry for a year or two? Why can't? Well, nobody will hire him. Why? He's too much of a risk.
Too much of a risk. Too much of a risk. And then we continue looking at some of the other stories from this week. And, the UFC canceled their second show of 2017 already. They canceled the March 3rd event. There was that event in the Philippines that they canceled that BJ Penn was originally supposed to fight on, and now they're canceling this event on March 3rd. I don't think that this is a bad thing. I would like to see them consolidate some of these events, find that sweet spot, and what I would like to see them do is consolidate all of these pay-per-views, have probably fewer pay-per-views, and feature more quality shows on the Fox platform, because we've seen now with these last 3 or 4 or 5 shows that Fox platform can be a big ticket item for them, especially during the football season. So I hope that they begin to get rid of some of these quote unquote meaningless cards. Like this event was a Fight Pass event, which again, the Fight Pass is a good free platform, but I don't think they will leverage it the same way that the WWE leverages their WWE network. So having these events on Fight Pass may not be the most attractive to fight fans, but that Fox platform is
fighters
huge.
don't even want to be on it.
Go ahead, say that again.
I said even fighters don't want to be on it. That was Lorenz Larkin's whole argument. I'm trying to get a name for myself and make big money. That's not going to happen on Fight Pass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
not
like
going to happen on Fight Pass.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not too mad at them for canceling this this event on March 3rd. I don't think it's too much of a too much of a fire alarm or anything like that. I think that this is a positive step for business purposes.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've overplayed their hand a little bit, just because everybody's like, you can never get too much MMA, and I'm like, I'm a fan of it and I'll watch it regardless. But for the casual fans, and that's the people who drive the big numbers and get the big pay-per-views, they're not going to be invested in all these cards you have because you don't have enough superstars to push them forward. And it's not like a basketball team or a football team or something where that represents your city, so you're guaranteed this much attention from this part of the country. I mean, with certain teams, you're guaranteed so many millions are just going to watch just because it's from this part of the country and they want to see their Cowboys, their Redskins, their whoever do well. You're guaranteed a certain amount of number of that. It's not the same with combat sports, because those fighters, even though they say they represent their city or their town or their state, they really just represent themselves. And they don't have that overall pull that the whole city wins. When Ronda Rousey wins, California doesn't win a title for Ronda Rousey. You know what I'm saying? It's not a title for that city or that state. You know where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I definitely do.
Steelers win, Pittsburgh wins, or the whole state wins. When Dallas wins, or Texas wins. When a guy from Texas wins a title, It's not for all of Texas, it's for him. And there's a big difference. So I think they have to play smart because they want to maximize their money. And the only way to maximize it is to enhance the depth and the quality of the cards and save the pay-per-views for the people who can really do numbers. It's the same thing in boxing. Canelo could do a pay-per-view. Floyd Mayweather used to be able to do pay-per-views. Outside of that, if you're not one of those guys, you shouldn't be doing pay-per-views. Just fight on cable, fight on regular cable, make your couple million, and if you get a big enough fan base, then go on pay-per-view. But pay-per-view is saved only for the rarest and biggest of stars. And anytime somebody who's not one of those guys gets on pay-per-view, they get kicked in the teeth financially. And this company, after paying all this money for the UFC, is not looking forward to losing more money or wasting any time with pointless pay-per-view cards that aren't going to sell, that aren't going to help their bottom line.
I'm definitely with you there. I think we're going to see 2017 is going to be an an interesting shift in how the UFC does business. And I sat out there and said I threw it out there all on the line during our end of the year show, which you can find on YouTube, when I called that I think that Dana White may not be with the organization at the end of this year, because I think that they're really going to shift how they're doing some of their business deals, and I think that better leveraging their platforms is going to be the start of it.
The funny thing about it is, like, the fighters are more invested in the business now, and now the company, even though MMA has been a big business thing, but now even the company's being more efficient and more vigilant in the actual the subtle financial aspects of business, because it's being run by a business now. It's not Dana White and his friends who got the money, whatever, and they're running a business. It's going to be an actual business who took over this business, who's going to start running it through their model and their structure, to their beliefs. And their goal isn't necessarily to put the best fights together. Their goal isn't to have the best fight and the best. Their goal is to make money. And that's the same way the fighters are looking at it now. I don't want to fight the best. If I can make 20,000 a show and 20,000 to win fighting the number 11 guy, I'll fight him rather than fight the number 4 guy and only make 8 to show and 8 to win. I'll fight whoever's going to bring me more attention and improve my brand and improve my stock. Everybody's trying to just hit the bottom line. It's no longer about competition in its purest form anymore. It's about what's going to get us back the money we've invested in this. The fighters want the money they've invested. The company that invested wants their money that they've invested.
Yeah, that's going to be
It's going to be a whole new UFC for all of us.
It's going to be a whole new UFC.
I'm going to say Conor McGregor versus Diego Sanchez. What?
It's going to be
It's going to get
crazy, man. It's going to be a crazy year. And speaking of like crazy conversations when it comes to MMA, I thought that Meryl Streep was nowhere near the list of names that I thought would be spoken about on popular MMA broadcasts, and hearing Dana White talk about her or anything like that. She's one of the names I would have never thought would have come up in conversation. But of course, she had some interesting comments to say during the Golden Globes earlier this week, and I get what she was trying to do. She was trying to take a shot at Donald Trump and his foolishness, and in doing so, she decided to take aim at a sport which he has kind of supported in the past. But in doing so, she said some pretty interesting things about MMA that has gotten some people pissed off. So, what do you think about what she said, and does it matter? Should we even be talking about this?
Well, first thing I want to say is, like, I don't know who said this, but I saw it on Twitter, and the fact that she said MMA instead of UFC was a huge step forward, and I agree, because most people say the UFC when they talk MMA. They don't really most people aren't fans of the MMA. They're fans of the UFC. So the fact that she understood there was a distinction, or maybe she didn't, or maybe she just chose those words. Either way, it showed me a step forward in the consciousness, because that means people are more familiar with the actual sport, not the organization the sport takes place in, which what the UFC is. I don't necessarily have a problem with what she says. I mean, she's not very informed on MMA. She doesn't really know. I mean, she's not friends with fighters. I don't know that she's friends with anybody who runs an organization. All she might know is what she's heard from relatives or younger people, or what she's seen in video clips, or what she's seen in passing articles. So her statement really doesn't mean as much Just as when fighters tell me how easy acting is, and acting's not a skill, and acting's not an art. It's just you get 15 takes to do it right. Anybody can do that. I don't listen to fighters and they say that either. Acting's so easy. Well, let's see the best examples of MMA fighters acting. I've seen it. Not very impressed. Sorry. So
Yeah, no, I'm not very
and
impressed with her comments too, and I get why
yeah,
people are talking about it.
she's not informed. She's about informed about MMA as most MMA fighters are actually legitimately informed about the art of acting or the art of theater. They're not informed. So why do I care about their opinion? Even if a famous fighter says acting's easy, who are you? How many awards have you won? Nothing. I don't
Exactly.
care what you think. You know.
Exactly. The same way she would expect one of them to tell her how to perform in a musical is as much as she should be telling a fighter what is art and telling them about their sport. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
And you know what? I don't think anybody should be trying to go ham on her. I don't think anybody should be just like lashing out on her because I understand they're frustrated. I understand they feel a certain kind of way, but her mentioning her mentioning the UFC on that forum or the MMA in that forum is most attention MMA's gotten in years. I mean, like, that's a big forum. Meryl Streep said it. She might not know anything about it, but the publicity, the way you can spin this, all the conversation you can create from it has done MMA journalists, MMA fighters huge favors. Now people are asking, what do you think about this? What do you think about Meryl Streep saying this? When do you ever think Meryl Streep and some of these fighters can be named in the same sentence? Never. So you got some free advertising. Maybe it wasn't positive, but now when they come to you, you have a chance to spin it and do it in a mature, responsible, intelligent way. Or you could just say, who the fuck is Meryl Streep? She sucks. You could waste the opportunity like that. Or you can maximize the opportunity and show them how smart you are, how aware you are, and how responsible you are, and how respectful you are. It's either way. It's a great situation for somebody to make a name off and separate themselves from the crowd. The question is, are the fighters going to be smart enough to take advantage of it? Because I guarantee you that was all over Twitter, that was all over Google, it was all over the news, and that was a chance for someone to come in, swoop in, and represent MMA the way they want to represent it, and maybe make a name for themselves. But I don't know if anybody's journalist or fighter took that upon themselves to do.
Yeah. And
I'm not saying that. Go ahead.
what's really unfortunate is that I get her message. She was trying to talk about the normalization of Donald Trump's behaviors and the things that are going on in the political landscape this year, but she completely missed her audience. Like she completely miss misspoke in a way that turned off the audience to what could have been a very powerful statement, and it's very unfortunate. It's
You're right.
unfortunate that we're talking about this in this manner as opposed to applauding her for making a statement on a major stage.
You're right. But the thing about it is this. Once again, she's not a politician. I mean, I hate to say this. I know she. I think she's an incredible actress. Nobody's gonna tell me Meryl Streep can't act. If you tell me that, we might have to end the show. She's a great actress, but she's not a speaker on that level. She was trying to do something. The execution didn't come off. The execution fell flat. That happens to millions of people who in everyday life. It happens to millions of people on TV and radio. So while I'm sad that she kind of fumbled it, I understand what she was trying to say, and I appreciate what she was trying to do. Just like you, she just didn't execute it very well, and I can't really be too hard on her because there's politicians who don't execute very well, and that's their actual job to make these kind of points. So I think she could have handled it better. I think she should have found a better way to do it, maybe rehearsed it better. But I understand what she was doing. I understand the point she made. I understand the mistake she made. I'm just saying either way, from the mistake she made, somebody could have benefited. MMA could have benefited, and MMA did benefit as a result. So while her mess up put some heat on her and put a target on her back a little bit, it gave a lot of fighters and promoters an opportunity to speak up and get their names out there off of what she
Mhm.
said. That was an entryway in.
Do you think she shows up to the Bellator event that she was invited to?
If Kimbo Slice rest in peace, Kimbo was still there, I think she might. I really do. But I don't think now. But if Kimbo Slice there, I think she might have. Because imagine Meryl Streep and Kimbo Slice at Bellator sitting in the crowd. Imagine that
I don't even
happening.
want to think about that.
That's
I don't
better
even
than
want to think about that.
that's better than Snoop and who's the one he does the show with? Martha Stewart, Meryl Streep, Kimbo Slice at Bellator, and then they go to the Academy Awards. Kimbo chilling in the crowd in Academy Awards. Oh, I,
Don't even do that.
it hurts my heart just that I missed out on that. Hurts me bad. Oh my god, that hurts. Oh my god, I'll
So
be so
yeah, man.
busy.
Like I'm not. I want to close it there because you just put the worst image in my mind. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna close the show there. Because yeah, I can't even begin to think about that. Let everybody know. Let our listeners know what you're working on this week and what you got brewing in the world of MMA ratings and the sport as a whole.
Um, of course, I do pieces on MMA ratings. I just this week they released the final installment of my developing a prospect pieces that I was doing as a 3-part piece. I finally finished the third part. It just kind of goes into matchmaking, which is the final stage of development, and how matchmaking plays a part in the finished product that you see for prospect going from prospect to legitimate contender to hopefully world champion. So that was something I'm very proud of. It was something I got a lot of good feedback off on the first 2 pieces, and people were asking me when the third one's coming out. So anybody's listening, the third one's out on MMA ratings as we speak. The next thing I'm working on, I think it's going to be 2-parter, not quite sure, but essentially it's something I brought up when I first got on the show, and it's talking about how a lot of MMA camps need to invest in outside consultation. Just because I feel like when you're in the same group, when you're in a group with full of people who agree with you and see things the same way you do, you can't be prepared for everything. You can't grow. You can't pressure test your ideas because you're just dealing with people who see things the same way as you. The only way you get growth and development is when you're challenged. You're not going to be challenged by people you constantly work with all the time because eventually y'all start coming to the same logical um, results. And so I'm thinking MMA camps need some outside consultants to help them for things that they might miss or look at problems from a bit different perspective so that they can benefit their fighters.
It sounds like you're politicking for a job, my friend.
Hey, dude, I've done it before. I'm telling you, anybody who I'm going to be live tweeting the shows as always when the fights. Watch what I'm saying, and I'll be telling you what these guys should be doing. And if you pay close attention, you'll be like, you know what? If he really did that, that would really work. Like, why is he doing this? Why is his corner keep saying get in his face? The guy keeps punching him. Maybe you should try and stay away from him. Maybe they should try that. I'm not hating on these corners. I want these guys to get their money. I want them to have a chance to be successful and have their camps grow big. But my concern is the fighters. I don't want a fighter's career cut short because he's not getting good instruction or all the information necessary. I don't want a fighter getting hurt because he's not good in getting information or all the information necessary. I'll quote Greg Jackson before hand it over to you. I'll quote Greg Jackson on the recent countdown between Penn and Rodriguez. Greg Jackson said, you're supposed to try and get as much information as possible and look at the problem from as many perspectives as possible. All the people who succeed in any phase of life, that's what they do. Get lots of information, get lots of perspectives, and then they attack the problem. If you're not doing that, you're not only gonna not succeed now, you're gonna fall further and further behind in competition because you don't have access to all the information you need to succeed. Information is key, and if you're not using it, it means you're scared, and if you're scared, you're not going to win. And that's a fact in any phase of life, and that's how I feel about this. It's not that I want to be a big star. I just want to see guys, if they're going to lose without getting wrecked, and if you're going to have a chance to win, especially for those guys who don't have top-notch athletic ability. They don't have those luxuries of turning a fight around. They don't have the luxury of a bad game plan. They have to be totally prepared, totally on their game, have an A, B, and C plan for when things get bad so that they can win. And worst case scenario, not get totally damaged in a fight. They have to have that, and guys aren't giving it to them.
That's some good breakdown there, sir. Some good information. So, yeah, with that, what am I working on? I am doing the usual, covering football, covering grappling all over the place, doing my thing. I got an interesting piece on the Ronda Rousey commentary that is going on. I'm not even going like the Ronda Rousey commentary has been crazy this last week. So I have that up on the site, but as always, you can find my work at MMAratings.net. You can catch my stuff there. You can catch me on Bloody Elbow. You can catch me just about all over the place, man. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and say thank you for listening to yet another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. You can check us out at MMAratings.net. Follow us on Instagram and on Twitter as well. Be sure to catch our commentary there. But we thank you
Hey,
for.
Raphael,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just got one more thing to say.
Go ahead, man.
I don't know if Julia Pena is listening to this, but she claimed she would have been the one to end the myth of Ronda Rousey. If Ronda Rousey would have came back against Julia Pena, she would have run through her and dominated her and crushed her within a round and a half. I don't know what she's smoking. I don't know what she's thinking. Maybe she's never seen herself fight. I have. Ronda Rousey would have soloed her and Elizabeth Phillips, one after the other, or both at the same time. I don't know what that girl's on. And I'm a fan of Julia Pena. I watch fights closely. That was never going to happen. She should be glad that Nunes did what she did to Rousey because now she might have a chance. But there's no circumstances where Pena has anything for Rousey. I've seen her fight. I know what she can do. Ain't happening. Had to get that out there because she's
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on that too. Just because like the way her style is so grappling based, it plays right into Ronda's wheelhouse, directly
a
into
grappler who wants to
her
clinch
wheelhouse.
and not strike is going to beat Ronda Rousey. A grappler who wants to clinch, fight in the clinch and grapple is going to beat Ronda Rousey with no strikes. Okay, then. All right.
I said that. I mean, hey, there's a such thing as pipe dreams, you know.
Yep. The pipe is the key thing. I don't want to say what she's smoking in it because that might have got her going. But seriously, I can say that.
So with that in mind, man, we're gonna go ahead and close out. You know, we always thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being here, checking us out, and be sure to catch us next week when we bring back another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast.
Thank you, sir. Everybody have a good night.
No, have a good night, man.